feeling. And I remember when you were first elected, there was that feeling around the hockey rinks where I went that most people were going to vote Justin Trudeau's government. It's a different sense now. At the hockey rink and around the community, you hear people saying, Poilievre's going to get my vote.
Were they saying that? They weren't necessarily saying they were voting for me 6 months before the election, though.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Like through the first half of the 2015, and I always worry about going too much.
Yes,
Oh, well, 2015 we did it.
Yes, yes.
But through the entire first half of the 2015 election, we were way behind in the polls. So there wasn't anything automatic or inevitable or even felt on the ground until the last few weeks of the campaign.
Yeah.
So Canadians tend to make up their minds later. Right now, absolutely. There's a huge level of frustration that is, a lot of it's pointed at me. A lot of it is directed at me through very clever use of social media and attack ads that we haven't yet responded to. But to prejudge the outcome of an election already is something that I don't think people would be too wise in doing.
It's a fair point.
Prime Minister, there's no question that there are some people who just quite simply aren't in your corner and want to see some change. And that's fair, right? That's democracy, that's their right. But what I think is different here is there seems to be a segment of people who have taken it to a whole new level. It's now pretty common that we see bumper stickers and flags that say F-Trudeau. I don't ever remember seeing an F. Harper flag or an F. Chrétien flag. This to me isn't politics. This is personal. You must have seen them. It has to bother you.
We want them out.
My first thought, and you pointed out well, what has happened over the past years that has brought people to that place of that much anger? Canadian politics and Canadians in general used to be a little more civil around disagreements like that. One of the things we've seen with the phenomenon of amplification of extremist right-wing voices, of misinformation, disinformation online is... No, there's always been those people who have, really aggressive negative views. What we've seen is the amplification of that, the taking up space of more and more of that, the organizing, so you get 3 people with flags outside any little community event I do, that makes it much more visible. But I don't think Canadians have actually changed for the most part. I mean, yes, people tend to give folks the benefit of the doubt. If someone's out there in the rain waving an F-Trudeau flag, people are going to say, boy, Prime Minister must have done really something terrible to upset that person, because we're good people. We sort of say, okay, there must be a reason for you to do that.
It seems un-Canadian.
It seems un-Canadian to not give people the benefit of the doubt. The problem is right now that there's a silent majority that is a little bit silent and maybe wondering whether it's actually a minority. And you got a lot of good, thoughtful people who are saying, I don't have anything personal against the leader, but everyone seems to hate him because I see all these flags, and therefore, he must be on his way out, or he must be unpopular. And it's sort of a self-feeding, particularly in both the media cycles and specifically the social media cycles that we're in, that amplifies itself. And what I am continually reminded of when I have real conversations with people, whether it's in a lunchroom at a plant, or whether it's mainstreaming down a small town, or sitting in a university classroom in the middle of a big city, is people are thoughtful, people are interested, and people are open to having real discussions about the challenges we're facing.
I know you're a dad. What about when your kids see it? Do you talk to them about it?
My daddy's a go.
When you see an F-Trudeau flag, people don't think about it, but I do. That's my daughter's last name on that flag. That's the last name that my 2 sons will carry throughout their lives.
And you did it to your kids,
It's hard for me to think about, how to
run people over with horses.
Make them understand that it's all part of the sacrifice and service that we're choosing to do, that the good things we're doing that is making this world a better place, even if it means I'm skipping their basketball games or not there at the dance recitals or whatever, that it does matter, and that yes, there are a few people who are very angry out there, but they don't represent everyone. Most Canadians are decent and thoughtful and just trying to make their way through in this country the best way we can, and that the things that we are actually doing as a government, the things that I'm focused on delivering for Canadians to help with affordability, to grow a strong economy to the future,
Is nothing.
really, really do matter more than a bumper sticker or a cheap slogan shouted out on the floor of the House of Commons.
We appreciate that answer. You did talk about how you do interact with Canadians in various different spaces. I know you're the kind of Prime Minister who will walk sometimes to grab some lunch, and you will run into people on the road. I know in Sault Ste. Marie you ran into a steelworker and had a pretty good discussion with a steelworker on his way into work. You must see all kinds. Are you seeing an equal amount, Prime Minister? Do you have someone like the steelworker who are questioning you and have tough questions for you, and a lot of people, some supporting you?
Well, I've actually made it a bit of a thing when I have the opportunity. I mean, I was walking into a restaurant here in the GTA a few weeks ago, and some guy in the front of a pickup truck, shouted out a big F-Trudeau, and it was a nice sunny day, and I wandered over and I said, "Hello, sir, how you doing?" And he's like, "Oh, no, I don't want to talk to you. Can I just know why you're so upset at me?" He goes, "You impose vaccines on us and you're trying to poison us." I say, "Okay, I can see I'm not really going to be able, now I understand why you're saying it. There's a real anger in a very specific segment of the population around what was a difficult time for all of us. But I also know that if he's convinced that I've tried to inject microchips into him through an experimental vaccine, nothing I'm going to be able to say to him is going to convince him that actually I didn't do that or didn't want to do that." What was interesting in that dynamic was the guy beside him in the truck. I sort of said, "How are you doing, sir?" He goes, "Could I get a picture?" And he took a picture with me. And it was, so I'm going to try and engage and try to understand. And there are people that can't be reached right now. We all have family members. I've got a half brother who's in a pretty bad place since the pandemic. Love him, still do, always will, but can't have real conversations with him based on facts and reality, and that's a significant or a real proportion of our communities, of our families, of our country that has gone that way. The thing that I am most reassured by is the vast majority of people, even as they are aware and understanding of the people who feel that way, don't necessarily want that kind of thinking to determine what the future of the country is going to look like. And folding back on democracy, where most people are thoughtful and decent and may disagree with me on a number of things, may agree and think I have a point on a couple of other things, will make decisions about what's in the best interest of the country when the election comes. And for me, allowing more conversations like we're having right now, not just amongst politicians and media, but amongst Canadians about what actually is at stake in the next election, is, I think, one of the best bulwarks of democracy against the kinds of excesses and loss that we're seeing attack democracies around the world.
And the challenge is applying that in the slogan world like you talked about that we live in, right? It's easy to have those few words. It takes a long time to explain what you just explained.
Most of us in our generation, I was deeply affected by watching The West Wing growing up. And the answer to slogans in that one was, well, what are the next 10 words, right? Like, what if you're going to say, axe the tax, for example, which everyone says, which is basically a call to abandon